Hey there everybody, it's Nathan Cool with NathanCoolPhoto.com, and in this video I'm going to review the brand new Godox AD100Pro, this tiny little guy right here. Now if you're unfamiliar with how some of these reviews work on YouTube and compared to the way that I do them, yes, we do get, most of us get free lights, free products from manufacturers, so we give them reviews, and you could about imagine that a lot of reviewers, that's why they give such good reviews on products. I am not that way. You can see some of my other reviews on, for instance, the AD200, the AD300, the AD400. I have links to those reviews in the description for this video. And if you might recall from my review on the AD300, I did not give that stellar remarks, and I'm going to use that same type of approach when I go to review this in this video on this AD100Pro. So I'm going to get in close. I'm going to show these a little bit better because they are small. In this video, I'm going to do the test results as compared to the 100 to just a Speedlight, and also the AD200. Now, if you want to see how the AD200 stacks up to the 300 and 400, once again, those other videos in the description of this video will help you out with that. So let's get in a lot closer and see how these compare, how they work up. Is this smaller little guy actually going to be better than a Speedlight? Does it have advantages? We can see that it's kind of small, but is it going to have enough power to do the work what we wanted to do? Also, a short disclaimer, I do mostly real estate photography. That's why these are pointed up with a typical bounce type flash that we'd be doing off ceilings or whatnot. But I'm going to give a more broad review of what this may be providing you depending on the type of photography that you do. But it will be mostly a concentration on real estate photography. So let's get in close and let's take a look at some of the results of this. So first, taking a look at some of the portability of these lights. Of course, that's one of the reasons of having one of these, whether it's the AD200, AD200Pro, the Speedlight, for instance. This happens to be the Zoom R2 by Flashpoint. It's the exact same thing as the Godox TT600. And then, of course, we have the one under review today, which is the AD100Pro. And we can see that there is definitely a size difference. The Speedlight here is one of the larger ones, 7.5 inches tall. When we take a look at the AD200, it's slightly longer at about 8 inches. And of course, we get down here to the AD100Pro, and that's only 4.75 inches in length. So it's definitely shorter for packing into bags. One of the things, though, is that the Speedlight, being a width of about 2.75 inches, has a thickness also of about 2.25 inches. When we get to the 200 as compared to the 100, that's where we can see a difference because the 100 is round, so it's about 3 inches. When we take a look at the 200 and we start turning that a little sideways, we can see that it is wide at about the same thing, about 3 inches. But when we look at how skinny that is, in fact, one of the reasons I like the 200 is because I can put it in my back pocket walking around, that it's only 2 inches in thickness. So definitely a difference. Having it cylindrical does limit some of the packing capabilities. Having things, of course, square, rectangular, then you can pack more things on top. For instance, in one of my Pelican cases, I'll have multiple AD200s just stacked on top of each other. These I couldn't probably stack on top of each other. I'd have to have them facing down, but there's enough room where I could line up a few of these across and then still put one on top. So definitely a portable unit. So when we take a look at the weight, the Speedlight still comes in the lightest at about 1 pound. The AD100Pro is just slightly heavier at 1.5 pounds, and the AD200 is 2 pounds. So it's not necessarily as light as a Speedlight would be, but it does have a lot more electronics in it, and of course that may be adding to some of it. But for the size, you would think that that would probably be lighter, but by half a pound it's not too bad. When you're talking about carrying around maybe 3 of these, yeah, you're adding maybe another, pound and a half compared to just carrying around some Speedlights. And if you're trying to carry this in a bag, that extra pound and a half, 2 pounds could be a little hefty, but it's not that big of a difference either way. Next, let's talk about some of the power. So what I do when I test this is I do a bounce flash, and you've seen this before, and I have a light meter at the other end of the room, and then I can see one for one how these match up. So doing full power, comparing the Speedlight to the 100 to the 200. With a speedlight at full power, I'm measuring about f8 when I'm using about ISO 320, that magic number that I talk about doing interior real estate photography. So speedlight at f8. When I go to the 100, it's barely brighter. It's f8 plus 0.5 stop. So it is a little bit brighter than a speedlight, but not a whole lot more. I'm going to show why it probably is and isn't as we take a closer look at it. When we get to the 200, it's a no-brainer. It's more than a full stop more of light coming in at f11 plus 0.4. The readings then stayed pretty much across the board when we take each one of these down to about half power and a quarter power. Once we get down to a quarter power though, there's really almost no difference between the Speedlight and the AD100Pro. Just once again, it's by about maybe a tenth of a stop difference, where there was a little bit more on the full power output when I measured time and again. So now, one of the differences, before getting to some of the things I really did like about it, just real quick on some of the price stuff, which this may be the linchpin on your buying decision. When we take a look at the least expensive alternative, when we come into the Speedlight here, the TT600, or like I've got here the Zoom R2 Flashpoint, same thing, it's about $75. And I've got links to these, by the way, so you can check them out yourself down in the description for the video. The 100 Pro comes in at $300. It seems a little bit high for that. I mean, that's about the price of an OEM Speedlight, which I'm not a fan of. And then the 200 Pro is $350, is slightly more, but you can get an AD200, not the Pro, but you can still get an AD200 for about $300, and sometimes they're on sale, which is basically the same price then when we're taking a look at the 100 Pro. So let's get in really close, take a look at the little bit of how this is laid out, some of the differences that it has from the AD200, and then I want to talk last about some of the nice things that I did like about this. So getting in close, I'm just comparing the back screen here of the AD100 Pro to the AD200. Now the 200 Pro is very similar, it's just recessed in the back. You can see though the screen it's a little bit on the dim side, and I'll show the difference here compared. I'm going to turn this on because there's something unique that they did here on the AD100 Pro, similar to the AD400, is that they have this lock in there, and I never really understood why. But you turn it on, I guess maybe that's if you butt dial it or something, but you have to move their wheel here. And if you notice that sound, it's just like a Speedlight in that it does have zoom capability. Even in the days when I used Speedlights for other things besides real estate photography, I never found really a need for the zoom process. If you do have a zoom feature that you're used to using on a Speedlight, then of course that would come in handy on the AD100 Pro. You can just change the zoom. Here's 28 millimeters, 35, 50, 70, 85, and then goes back to 28. So it has some zoom capability on it, not really a fan of that. You can see though that it's a fairly bright display that we have on the back here, and similar to the display that you would use off of any of the Godox mono lights, is that you have the ability to set your channel, your groups, all that. I've got it in manual mode. That's the biggest capability that I end up using off of it. And of course this then works just like it would with any other of the Godox line or the Flashpoint line with like the R2 Pro or the X Pro triggers. So that all is one compatible system to work with it. So not a big deal. Nothing really changes on this so much. Yeah, it's got a menu button here, and there's some things that you can change in there. Nothing really too surprising, so I'm not going to get into all the menu stuff there and what all that means. But there is something though that is a little bit odd on this. I think they had a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I understand why they did it, and it's the battery. Let me just shut this off real quick and I'll show you what I mean. So taking a look at the side here, we have the battery release on this side. So this is for releasing the battery. That's not the problem. The problem is the battery itself, which I understand why they have it. It's a little bit smaller. Let's just pop that out there real quick. You'll see what I mean. Is that the battery is not at all like the AD200 battery. So it's definitely a different animal. Let's do a little comparison here. It's about the same size when we put them up against each other. You can see though that one is thinner. The 100 here is thinner than the 200 battery. But it seems like if they would have just used the same battery, because this battery here for the 200 is the exact same one that's used on the 300. So if you're going to have a full line of 100 100s and 200s and 300s by Godox, then it would make sense that why not have the same battery? So to save themselves somewhere here, I would say that's maybe about a ½ inch at most of space, then why didn't they just use the exact same battery? So I'm sure that somehow they had to squeeze that in and make that, but just be aware there is a different battery, so there's obviously then a completely different charger that you need for the AD100Pro. So let's take a look at some of the things I really did like about this light. Besides some of the portability, it's fairly well constructed in that it has a frontal head right here on the front of it. It is a little bit yellow in my case, that the one that I received, so I was worried about the white balance a little bit, but I really didn't see that affected much. It does have a small modeling lamp LED that comes through this little part of the frontal, but that of course was something that I normally wouldn't use. But the thing I liked about having this type of portability with it is that front, that mount around that frontal head is magnetic. So they have these various different modifiers, for instance like this dome diffuser, and you just pop it on. So it's similar to like the mag mod you might recall from my recent video on looking at the mag mod compared to using a shoot-through umbrella. This is a possibility. So when in doubt, you could possibly just pop this on. If you don't have enough light power for doing, for instance, a bounce, you will lose some light power through a dome diffuser, but you will have more light than you would doing a bounce. So that's one idea, but that's just using the dome diffuser. They have other add-ons. For instance, they also have barn doors. So you just pop that on there, and now you've got yourself some barn doors for some directional lighting. So you can get creative with that. It also has a frontal in there. Didn't test the light output from that. This is something where you wouldn't be doing bounce. It's not really for real estate photography, but it's kind of a neat little setup that they have there for those barn doors. I thought that was kind of neat. And if you're doing some creative stuff, I thought that would be definitely an add-on. It's so easy to pop this on and off too with that little magnetic thing on there. So you just take that off. It's like no big deal. Besides the barn doors, they also have a grid, which you can pop on like that. Also, it comes with a bounce card. So you can put this bounce card in there, and then when you turn it up the other way, so like that, then you'd have the bounce card just fits right into that like so. So it's just a piece of paper. It's not that big of a deal, nothing really scientific on that, but it does give some capabilities. And besides then just that grid with the bounce card, is also a little rubber snoot. So a little snoot here that comes with it. Of course, this is a little add-on package with all these things in there. But the snoot, it's not magnetic, but it's just a little rubber thing, and just fits on it like that. So once again, some creativity that you can get out of this. Also comes with a bunch of different gels that you could pop into the last modifier that I put on there. So it does have the ability for a very small light to get creative and do other things outside of just real estate photography. So in a real head-to-head comparison, comparing the AD100Pro to the AD200Pro, in this case that just happens to be an Evolve 200 R2, same thing as the Godox AD200 that's just branded by Flashpoint, as you know. If I were to really choose one of these over the other for the work I do, since I do mostly real estate photography, the AD100 would be out. It's just not for me. I do like that it's portable, but quite honestly, I can just buy speedlights for a fraction of the price for something that I would need for real estate photography. If I was doing more creative stuff, if I wanted to do more art type of stuff, I wanted to get in something with a small light that I could portably take around, and it's battery operated, so this could easily go outside to do a lot of work, then I would think possibly about getting some AD100 Pros, because as I mentioned before in my last video with the AD300, I didn't find any benefit to that over compared to being between the 200 and 400, but the AD100 being so small, portable, and with all those little add-ons that they have, it does seem to be a creative type tool. Might also be good for doing product photography, could also be done for portrait photography, but it is kind of a weak light. So you have to weigh the odds on, do you need some of the added benefits of the AD100 compared to a speedlight when you get into that realm. As far as real estate photography goes, that would definitely be the AD200 or the Evolve 200 would be my light of choice if I had to have a portable one. And of course then when I go big, it's the AD400 or the AD600. So I hope this review was helpful for you, that you can make some better buying decisions on whether the AD100 Pro is right for you. If you did like this video and you want to see more, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It won't cost anything, and as soon as one of these videos is posted, you'll be the first to know. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, take care, be safe, and get out there and shoot something.